And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on the program. The pursuit of harmony between life and work from one of the hardest working professional women, media magnate Arianna Huffington. Right after. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The world's two largest economies looking horns probably grabbed the most headlines in 2018. It has never been a rosy road for relations between China and the U.S., but this year seems to be a particularly difficult time. And all that has been fully reflected in both countries' media. The whole year, the banners on China-U.S. trade tensions circulated daily, with speculations on each other's motives a big part of it. How much does the narrative capture the reality, though? What should be the role of the media in that regard? On sidelines of Understanding China International Conference, I sat down with Arianna Huffington, the founder and also the publisher earlier of Huffington Post, to get her insights as a prolific author and international media mogul. Geopolitics these days, unfortunately, is playing a much bigger role than it should. And we have seen that tendency becoming ever bigger over the past few years. Let's just say what's going on between the two largest economies in the world. So Arianna, when we talk about bringing back the core within ourselves, when we talk about make sure it is about the peace and development for all, are we really talking about wishful thinking?
Basically, when you have a superpower being challenged by the rise of a growing power, the United States being challenged by China, what you need more than anything is wise leaders. Only wise leaders can stop a catastrophe. And wise leaders and wise citizens are the only way to stop what otherwise would happen if we listen to the Thucydides.
What's your interpretation of wise?
Going back to history, there's so much in Chinese history. Going back to the Song dynasty, 2,000 years, and looking at what was called then rival partners. You can be partners even while you are rivals. You can have differences even while you are working together. That is the constraint that we need now. And only wise leaders can stay within the boundaries that will prevent not just a trade war, but a catastrophic war.
Arianna, you've been working in the media as a most well-respected flag, I would say, one of those. And now you left to a certain extent to what you are doing right now. So probably when you are outside the mountain, you could see the mountain even clearer than you are inside. What exactly the media's role these days?
Well, unfortunately, the rise of social media has made it much easier to play to people's prejudices and to reinforce the worst in human beings. So it becomes all the more important for mainstream media to stay absolutely categorically, clearly, just on the facts and on good reporting, because otherwise people are so confused about where the truth is, where the facts are. So it is the role of media to stay very closely on that, and not Thrive Global, you know, my new media platform. We look at what is happening in the world every day, but we do it from the point of view of standing back and looking at the whole picture, not getting lost in covering every presidential tweet and basically being caught in the constant cycle of outrage, which depletes our energy and makes us much less likely to achieve results.
But when you look at it, the facts are the hardest thing to get these days.
Facts are not hard to get. Facts get confused because of fake news, as the president calls it. But there are many, many U.S. Media players that are doing amazing reporting and that are bringing the facts out. There's no absence of facts. We just need to be very cognizant of where the facts are to be found and not to be manipulated.
In this part of the world, there's always concern whether the share of arguments and the share of facts that is valued in this part of the world could get across to the other parts of the world, for example, to the United States. And the other side, I guess, also have similar feelings, if not of the same degree. Arianna, what do you make of this scene, particularly now when the bilateral relations is getting ever more intense?
What is important is to recognize that there are many people on both sides that want to achieve that possibility of rival partnership. If you go back to the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Jack Kennedy recognized that if he could not change the relationship with Russia, they could blow up the world, and that it was his responsibility to help create a world where they could coexist. And really we're at a similar moment. And you know, it's never everybody who recognizes the truth. We just need a critical mass of leaders, a small critical mass of leaders in both countries.
In 2015, Ms. Huffington launched the online site Huffington Post, which was later ranked among the most powerful blogs in the world. Ms. Huffington herself has also been recognized in various media outlets, appearing on Time magazine's Top 100 list and Forbes' special rundown of the world's 100 most powerful women. But recent years, she announced that she would leave the Huffington Post after 11 years there and launch Thrive Global, a startup company and digital platform dedicated to health and wellness. Advocating that burnout is not the price we must pay for success, Ms. Huffington tries to draw people's attention now to their well-being. Which stage are we in terms of our understanding of our life cycle, particularly how we can deal with the stress?
Well, I believe this is an incredible inflection point where we need to understand that when we take care of our well-being and give ourselves time to recharge while working hard and achieving, we are going to be more productive, our performance will improve, so that it has benefits not just for the individual but for corporations and for the country. I learned from my own wake-up call. You know, I was living life without recharging, always working not just hard, I always work hard, but not smart. You know, working so many long hours that you suffer from diminishing returns. In 2007, when I collapsed from burnout and sleep deprivation, hit my head on my desk, broke my cheekbone, and that was the beginning of my looking at all the latest science and recognizing that, in fact, I was ignoring the latest data, and I was acting as though I were a machine. And the goal with the machine is to minimize downtime. But the human operating system is different. But we also see, like Kai-Fu Lee, you know, he had his own wake-up call when he was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma cancer. And he wrote after that, and I quote him in my book, Thrive, how that changed his life because he realized that he had distorted priorities.
Exactly. But you know, China is in a drastic changing time. You could argue also very similarly in the other parts of the world. So how can people be able to put the health as a priority and streamline their life as a result?
I think the first thing is to change beliefs by going back to the Chinese roots. The wisdom is here. You don't have to import it from any other country.
You don't.
It's all here. If you look at the Taoist concept of yin-yang, for me, it captures everything. Young is you go out and conquer. China has a long way to go to keep growing, to keep innovating, to keep raising people out of poverty. All that is in China's present and future. But it can do it in a sustainable way by also taking care of the yin part, which is the refueling part. So yang, you go out and conquer. Yin is you come back and refuel. That's all we're saying. We are not saying don't go out and achieve. We're not saying don't create transformational growth. We are actually saying that the growth will be much more transformational and sustainable if we also take care of our human capital, which is the most precious resource.
You've been living in the United States for decades. So do you notice also a similar period of time that can be comparable in U.S. history, for example, and that of what China is going through right now? And how is stress and dealing with stress, in a way, help to solve the problem?
Actually, I think that the United States is going through a similar period right now. And the United States needs to also tap into its own sources of wisdom.
What is it then? Do you see it?
You have an enormous amount of Western culture, from my fellow Greeks, Socrates and Plato, to the Stoic philosophers, and they all said the same thing in different ways as the Chinese philosophers, which is that if we don't take time to recharge and tap into our own sources of wisdom, we are going to be operating on the surface. And we're going to be operating from the worst part of ourselves, the least wise part of ourselves. And that has terrible consequences, both in our own lives, but also for the country. And if you look at the incredible increase in mental health problems here, depression, anxiety, chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension, this has an impact on the economy. It has an impact on healthcare costs, and it has an impact on the productivity of human capital.
You have been facing setbacks throughout your life, while you have been also achieving tremendously. Failing to run for the governor of California, 30 refusals for your second book from the publishers.
36 refusals.
Oh my God, my dear. Okay, so what is it that make you be able to come out and always make sure you get your message to the other parties?
Well, I was very lucky to have an amazing mother, and I know you had an amazing mother. I loved the piece you wrote about her. And what you described about your mother, her ability to tap into her own inner strength through incredibly difficult times, so much more difficult than anything you or I have been through. And part of that is to recognize that failure is not the opposite of success. That's what my mother used to say to me. Failure is a stepping stone to success. And that's where tapping into our own inner wisdom and resilience and strength comes into it, because that makes it much more likely that we'll be able to get up again and move on to greater things.
You've been thriving on top of fear, but for most of people, this is such a challenge. For women particularly.
I think it's very important to talk about women, because women are suffering much more from this culture of burnout, because women are still, in the majority of cases, the primary caregivers at home,
yes,
as well as elder parents. And so if we really want women to have equity, we need to realize we have to change the culture of burnout. Otherwise, we will keep going to Davos every year and looking at the data, and it's not budging.
No.
In fact, the progress of women has stalled. And for me, it will never really change fundamentally if we don't change that culture of stress and burnout.
People have too much demands for women. They want to have them to look wonderful all the time and work as hard and probably even harder than the other side of the gender, and also be a very loving and successful and capable mother at home. It's impossible, others argue. You argue about life-work balance is actually make them as one.
Yes.
Do you still hold on to that?
Yes, I don't believe in the term work-life balance. That's not really what we need. What we need is work-life harmony, work-life integration. I love the concept of Wu-Wei. Can you say it in a proper Chinese accent?
Yeah.
You know, W-U-W-E-I. You know, the concept of flow and harmony,
yes,
and acting without stress and burnout. I
Wu
think
Wei.
Wu-Wei. Wu-Wei is a very powerful concept. That's what we need to bring back. It's not about balance. It's about operating from a place of harmony within yourself. And from that place, you don't get depleted. You don't get exhausted. And that's what your ancestors have taught us. So we need to actually acknowledge that and integrate it into our lives.
Are we smarter?
We may be smarter, but that doesn't matter if we're not wiser. The problem is not IQ. The problem is wisdom. That's what's missing.
From Wu Wei to the ultimate wisdom, Arianna Huffington. Thank you. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. It's the weekend. Have a great one, everyone.